Recently, I've been jumping back on Unleashed, trying again and again to get S ranks on greatly designed stages. Everyone already knows Unleashed's stages are really well designed, good platforming, reaction based execution, and etc. But I've been thinking about how the game actually feels. Sonic Unleashed feels amazing to control and play through. And while yes, it's in part due to the controls being, actually good, it's also a result of Unleashed being, cinematic. Take Windmill Isle Act 1 for example. There's so many moments where the camera shifts around and such, and makes it such a smooth experience. Literally, the scene on the rails is a really good example of this moment. But this aspect seems to be lost in recent installments, like in Sonic Forces or Sonic Frontiers. I'm not going to talk about Sonic Lost World because we don't talk about that game, but things just don't feel as smooth as before. So let's answer the question. Has Sonic lost its cinematic touch? In recent years, the camera's been feeling like it's been doing more hard cuts instead of, easing in. Generations didn't have this, and neither did Unleash, but it feels like Forces was the start of it. It's very evident in the first stage, for example. Look how it quickly brings the camera back behind Sonic after the ramp, or when it's expanding to reveal the worm things. It feels so rough, like it's cutting too fast. I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but these really awkward and jarring camera tricks make Forces feel like a clunky game, even though it already is. And again, if we compare this to Unleash's camera, it's clear that its camera is much more smoother and adds to the cinematic feel of the game. The hard cuts are also in Frontiers, but that game already proves that it's good at cinematic moments because of the Titan fights. Cyberspace basically continues what Forces does with its camera, and that's why returning stages feel pretty shallow, because on top of Frontiers' already pretty weak controls, the camera work is just not as good as the previous installments. Just in general, the camera just feels way too unnatural and awkward as it's moving around, and the fact that I've been only mentioning Unleashed so far makes it seem like it's only a trick in that game, but no. The smooth camera is in plenty of Sonic games actually. In fact, it's in both adventure games and a lot of the subsequent games after those too. Though not all of them. This doesn't mean that hard-cutting camera angles are bad. Of course not. Secret Rings is a pretty good example, but mostly when you're incredibly fast or you have the crest of wind. In Secret Rings' case, it actually works to its benefit because of how the camera's positioned. It's always in a pretty dynamic spot or at a point where Sonic is about to run by, so it gives you a good sense of speed. I implore you to look at footage of Levitated Ruin because it's by far Secret Rings at its peak gameplay cinematics. And so, that brings us back into now. Forces, and more so Frontiers, have done that camera positioning trick that I was talking about with Secret Rings, but it kinda pales in comparison because, I'm gonna be real, Sonic feels slower in the recent installments. And so that brings me to my second reason of why Sonic's gameplay cinematics feel so lacking. Subpar visual effects. Animation, of course, also plays a role, but I want to focus more on visual effects. If you want to see more in-depth explanation about Sonic's animations, you can check out New Frame Plus's video on the animations of Sonic games. Sonic Advance 2 has some good visual effects, so let's talk about that. With more of an emphasis on speed, Sonic Advance 2 has this effect where you start seeing clones of Sonic because of how fast he's going. Though this only happens if you're at fast enough speeds, and it actually also appears in the 2D Rush titles. And sometimes, if you're fast enough, you can actually just run past the camera entirely. Check out Taz's of Sonic Advance 2 for that. This is something that's been pretty consistent with the Boost titles actually, though it's communicated differently because Sonic has a big aura in front of him, there's also the motion blur, and a sound effect too, but that's not really relevant since it's sound design. Frontiers does this pretty well with the power boost, and I'd like to talk about how Sonic without the power boost feels pretty slow even when he's boosting, but the point of the power boost is that it makes Sonic significantly faster, so I guess I can't entirely fault it. However, there is one issue that arises, and it probably sounds weird, but boosting on a rail feels kinda slow even with the power boost. It's why a lot of the times you'll see players kind of spam the boost button even though in reality you're going at the same speed when you're power boosting. For some reason they just didn't put the trail when you're power boosting on a flat surface. And I can imagine this is for gameplay reasons. The camera's already behind Sonic, and the trail would kind of make things harder to see. So let's answer that question. With all we've discussed, is Sonic losing its cinematic nature? Well, I'd say to an extent, yes. While the visual and camera tricks do have plenty of good examples in recent times, there's areas to improve. The camera in recent Sonic games should ease in more because it makes you feel like you're in a movie when you're watching gameplay, but when you're actually playing, it feels very immersive. The hard cuts aren't inherently bad, but they should be utilized well, as seen with Sonic and the Secret Rings, and it can be handled better in recent titles. Visually, concerning the boost, things are honestly quite fine. I'd just say bring back the aura in front of Sonic from Generations and Unleash and a few other games. And with all the footage we've seen of Sonic X Shadow Generations, I think these criticisms are actually present. They still have the hard cuts, but the camera feels like it's being more dynamic and it's easing in a little more. The cutscenes also look great and they're more cinematic than Frontiers' Titan cutscenes and QTEs, at least in my opinion. On top of this, I think I really like Shadow's boost effect. Anyway, that's all for today. I want to say I am not a movie expert by any means. I don't know the last thing about camera tricks in a cinematic film or anything like that, but I still wanted to make a video about this for fun, because I feel like this is something that not a lot of people talk about. And even then, some people talk about it on Twitter, but not a lot. But that's all. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned. Ciao.